Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays, starring Kelsey and Dylan. Starring? What am I saying? With Kelsey and Dylan. I guess we're starring in it.
We're the
I
stars
guess
of
this
the
is
show.
our big role debut. Yeah. So welcome. We're talking about Echo episode 4. We're almost done. We're gonna have to wait 2 weeks to find out what happens at the end, even though you all have known what happens at the end since the beginning because they dropped them all at once. But as we've been saying, we've been going week by week by week. Covering each episode on their own. Just want to say, sorry for the glare. I don't have my ring light handy, and I didn't want to delay this recording anymore because Kelsey has stuff to do today. I have stuff to do today. The other Kelsey in Vegas has something to do today. Hopefully, secure that third Super Bowl ring for the Chiefs. I'm wearing my Giants hat just because it's Super Bowl Sunday, even though
Yeah.
the Giants have not been close to a Super Bowl in quite some time. But we did live through 2 of them in our lifetime. That's big. But
Yeah.
Kelsey, how are you doing on the Super Bowl Sunday? Obviously, you guys are seeing this Monday, so the Super Bowl's already happened. So you're all probably
Yeah,
looking at me
we
like, haha, 49ers beat you, Dill. Or you're like, yeah, no, Chiefs won, obviously. Mahomes. Can't bet against them. But Kelsey, how are you doing? Big night for you, obviously. Taylor Swift, boyfriend playing in the Super
Yeah.
Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying to Dill before we start recording, I do have to work on Super Bowl Sunday, so I will be definitely watching the highlights of every time they cut away to Taylor Swift on
Mm.
TikTok later. But it's honestly for the best because sports make me so nervous. This is
Mm.
like I just get so into it. Like I have a
Right.
visceral reaction, especially if I really, really want
A
it to
certain
go
team.
one way or the other.
Right.
So, it's probably for the best that I'm not watching because I would just be a nervous, sweaty
Right.
mess the entire game.
Who are you rooting for? You're rooting for the Chiefs?
The Chiefs,
Yeah. Okay.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Karma
It's
is the guy on the Chiefs,
because
coming straight home
I
for
was the guy
me.
all my life who was like, "Oh, the Patriots just keep on winning and winning and winning, and I'm sick of it."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I feel like I'm rooting for the Chiefs who are doing kind of the same thing. They're winning and winning and winning. But like honestly, I feel like because they're younger and they're still fresher, I feel like in 10 years, if
Yeah.
they've won 6 more, everyone's gonna
Yeah.
get sick of them, especially when like
Right.
because Kelsey, his brother's retiring, so there's a good chance if he wins a Super Bowl, he might retire tonight. Who knows? That's also on the table, a rumor. Um,
Mm.
but what I like about the Super Bowl a lot so yeah, my whole thing, like I rooted against the Patriots, but I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I'm kind of hypocritical, but I'm rooting for the Chiefs for obvious reasons. I love
Yeah.
Kelsey. I love that team. My roommate was a Chiefs fan, Landon. So I'm all in on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
But also just from a betting perspective, you can't bet against the Chiefs because they have been so good and they know how to handle this postseason. They know they've been to Super Bowls. The 49ers have too, but it's not the same team as it was. Neither is the Chiefs, but they have some of their same guys. Anyway, what I like about the Super Bowl though is that you can enjoy it if you're not a sports fan because we're getting tons of trailers, including some Marvel ones. We're definitely getting a Deadpool trailer. So next week we
Yeah.
will cover the Deadpool trailer because obviously it will have come out after some weird time inception. But we're probably gonna get maybe another look at Madam Web, even though it's coming out next week, so maybe not. But yeah, like
Mhm.
it'll be interesting to just kind of see some stuff, movie trailers, even non-MCU movie trailers. I know we're getting Kung Fu Panda, we're getting Quiet Place, we're getting probably another Inside Out trailer. But also, the props, and that's kind of what you're talking about, like Taylor Swift. Like, there's a lot of fun. Like, even if you're not a sports bettor or you don't bet on sports, you can
Yeah.
still bet on props. You can bet what color Gatorade is going to be poured on the coach, and you can make money that way. You can bet
Right, right, right.
how long the national anthem is going to go, if it's going to go over or under 100 seconds. You can bet how many times. And here's the big bet I want to ask you because I want to lock it in now on air.
Okay.
How the over under on how many times they'll cut away from Taylor Swift. Before I tell you what the over under is set at, what would you say
Okay.
is like kind of around the number it should be? Because over under
Well,
means like over, you know what over under means. Yeah.
I would love I yes, I for sure love over under. I know exactly what that means. I think just for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that means, not me, because I know
Yeah.
what it means.
No,
But
an
just
over under.
for
Yeah.
people who are listening who
I
don't know
will.
what it
Yeah.
means, maybe just explain for
No,
them.
an over under bet is basically they give you a number and they say, is it going to go over or under this amount? So it's really like, they give you a number. They say they will show Taylor Swift this amount of times. Is it over this
Okay.
amount of times or under this amount of times? National anthem, it's
Okay,
going to be
okay,
100
okay.
seconds. Is it going to be over 100 seconds or under 100 seconds? So right now, I'll just tell
Okay.
you
I
the
gotcha.
line is set at 6.5 for Taylor Swift. I think that's
Six and a
ridiculously
half
low.
times?
6.5. I think it's going to go way over 6.5. I think you're going to see her at least 10 times during this game. Because
Well,
it's how
honest
many times are
yeah.
they going to cut away from her in the broadcast? Cut away to her in the broadcast. I think it's at least, especially if Kelsey has like 3 or 4 big receptions. Plus, they're just going to
Yeah.
show her at the beginning of the game. They're probably going to show her during the national anthem. They're going to show her at the end of the game. That's 6 right there.
Right, right, right.
And then
Oh,
all you
yeah,
need is
you're
2 more
right.
cutaways to the camera. I think it easily hits the over on this one. I would go over 6.5, 100%. But I wanted to get your opinion because you are the true Swiftie, and I don't wanna bet money on it until I talk to you.
Right, right, right. Well, a lot of people have been talking about it in, like, terms of seconds, like, she had a total of 25 seconds, like, during the last
Oh,
game,
shit.
or 40
See, that's tough.
44 seconds during the last
Yeah.
game.
Okay.
But for cutaway times, I don't know, 6, yeah, 6 seems a little low. I'm gonna go at least 8. Like, I think
Okay,
it
so
should be
yeah.
at least 8. So
So
over.
you would pick the over. Okay, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I
I
would.
saw that number. I saw 6.5 because they usually do end a half because if it is 6, it's
Yeah.
lower, and then if it's 7, it's higher. So they put it at 6.5. But I'm like, I can't imagine them only showing
Okay,
her
gotcha.
five times. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
don't see them doing that, especially if they show like
yeah.
Kelsey's family. She's still gonna be in the shot. If they pan to Mahomes, Brittany Mahomes, she'll probably be sitting right next to Brittany Mahomes. So you'll just get her in the
Right,
shot. You
right,
know what I
right.
mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's an easy bet. So honestly, if any of y'all are betting, I mean, you oh no, you're listening to this Monday, you can't. But I will send this in the Discord. I'll say right now, bet over on 6.5. So
Yeah,
thank you, Kelsey. So that's Kelsey's sports betting insight.
that's my
Um,
expertise.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So yeah, we'll see if that bet pans out. And I also bet I bet red and clear Gatorade. So I made two bets because I think
Okay,
because both teams are red. I think it's like it would be obvious if it was a red Gatorade, but Glacier Cherry is the white one, so like that's still a red flavor. So I was like, oh,
okay.
let me go clear because the odds for clear is great. Like a few bucks gets
Yeah,
you like 50, $60. So I'm just
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
seeing how far I go with the betting, but I like the props because it makes it fun. You don't have to like watch football all year to like guess them because they're so random. You can bet the coin toss. You
Right.
can bet heads or tails. Like it's kind of like that. So that'll be fun. Anyway, non-sports related talk. Sorry,
Yes.
Kels. Let's talk about stuff you
All
actually
good.
want to talk about. What's some news
Um,
you got for the week, Kels?
well, it actually also pertains to what we've kind of integrated into our shows every week when we talk about the best things that we've watched.
Yeah,
So my
that was gonna be my
news and
next
the
question, but we'll start with that. We'll start with that.
yeah, so I'm killing two birds with one stone here because the best thing that I watched and my news is the assembled episode that they put out on the Marvels.
Oh,
I just thought that this episode, like, delve so much deeper into like really specific departments that I don't think have gotten as much airtime as the previous assembled
mm,
episodes. Specifically, they talked a lot about Laura Cartman's composition of the score and everything that went into that, which I thought was really, really interesting. The first thing that we learned was that, she first of all, she's just a really cool lady. If you haven't watched this
mhm,
episode, I highly, highly recommend it. Because she's just sitting, she like wearing this is she's like wearing this like black and white outfit where it's like a blazer that's like half black, half white. She's got these big glasses on. One lens is black, one lens is white. She's got this like big blonde hair. I'm like, "Oh, she's just a cool, cool lady," first of all. And then she's, talking about how she had to, compose a score surrounded by, um, a movie that takes a lot in space and how, there's some real challenges and some real opportunities that come with that because space is a soundless atmosphere, and any sound that does happen in space is like 60 octaves below what the
yeah,
human ear can actually hear. So it's
uh-huh,
pretty much all just vibrations out there. And so she actually turned to this woman that she knew. Her name is Evelyn Glennie, and she is a deaf percussionist. So
hmm,
she has this like slew of all these different kind of percussion style instruments, all these different like drums and bowls and things like that. And she basically just like because she's deaf, she hears sound through her body through the vibrations, and that just seemed like a match made in heaven to create the score for this film because they were just doing all this experimental work with these different drums, and they had this giant metal bowl that they're actually just like rolling around marbles in.
mhm,
And you see shots of Nia DaCosta listening to it and being like, this is incredible, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's a metal bowl full of marbles. And it was just like so it was just so cool and interesting, like just how these people's minds work in order to create stuff like this. And, they talked a lot about the visual effects team talked a lot about the switching that happened in the movie, and how a lot of thought went behind, when the switch happened, if they were gonna follow the like character A to the new location in which they were, or if they were gonna stick with character B in the original location that
Mm,
they stayed in, and the semantics of all of that.
right.
Um, it was also just such so empowering to find out that the majority of the creative team that behind the Marvels were all women, which was cool. It was written by two female writers, female director, lots of women on the visual effects side of it. Obviously Laura Cartman did the music. They
Hmm.
had, female costume designers, and it was just like, wow, like a lot of attention was um, brought to this
Right.
project,
Hmm.
deservingly so. And I there was this one part where they were talking about the costumes and how they were like, "We definitely just wanted this to be like, just women being women and like doing their thing and being, badass women and not, sexualizing them in any way or making it seem, making something for some sort of gaze or anything like that." So, it was just definitely just so empowering to just hear all that stuff. And it got me wondering, Dill, and it this is a question that I wanted to ask you because
Mm,
it's it's so incredible to hear about everything, like how detailed and how much attention gets put into every single aspect of this film, right? Like the music, the
hmm.
costumes. They talked a
Yeah.
lot about Aladdin, the singing planet, and how every single costume was handmade. They didn't buy anything, like they didn't buy like a costume and then like add stuff to it. They just like
Hmm.
handmade everything and 3D printed new textures to make new things. And the writers were talking about how, the integrated relationships of, you know, Captain Marvel basically having a character on one side who idols her and
Right.
and loves her, and then has a character who sees her as a very flawed person, and how
Yeah.
that the three of them were going to work together.
Uh-huh.
And so they have all this amazing team behind them. So I'm like, why are these projects falling flat?
Right.
What do you think is happening
Well, and the
that
thing is, you're explaining
we
all this stuff,
feel
and I'm like, where
yeah,
was this? And it's
right.
really tough. I really think, and I've said it over and over again. I think it's studio interference. I think it's the people who aren't necessarily there every day working on it that are
Yeah.
kind of taking everything and kind of molding it into what they want it to be. And I know, like, when you're doing a bigger franchise, yeah, you want it to all feel like it exists in the same world. But look at the times that Kevin Feige has been most hands off. There's two glaring examples: Black Panther and Guardians 3. And
Mm,
what are two of the films that are in both Kelsey and I's top 10 Marvel films? And what film got nominated for an Oscar? And what film has been like being praised this year as the only good Marvel film next to Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse? Guardians 3 and Black Panther. Like, I think
mhm,
it shows when they just let the directors and the creators just kind of do their thing. And I think we saw it a little bit in the series with Loki and Werewolf by Night, like, and Guardians Holiday Special. And I think the series is where Feige's like, well, it's not going to theaters, a lot of money isn't riding on it, so like that can be our experimentation. But then we see a lot of the series end up having some of the more notable like effects and like notable some of them are notable, obviously, but like a lot of
mhm,
notable design stuff, like Loki and Werewolf by Night. Like, some of that is the most interesting stuff in the MCU now because
yeah,
it feels like the one that is giving less care to. This reminds me of the Disney Renaissance. So when Little Mermaid came out in the '89, it blew Disney back into the like because Disney was a failing company. They had Little Mermaid; it was a big success, and then they made Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and they were like, "We're riding this high. We're riding this high. We need to keep going. We're gonna make Pocahontas. It's gonna be the biggest thing in the world." And our B team, you can work on that movie about the lions. It's called Lion King. And then what happened? Pocahontas wasn't that good, but Lion King
mm,
was amazing because what happened is Disney was so focused on giving us this amazing princess movie Pocahontas that they said,
mm,
the B team can work on Lion King. And Lion King ended up being great because it was people who were actually passionate about it, weren't looking at it as any sort of corporate product, any sort of money, financial thing, any sort of artistic thing. And Lion King goes on to win more Oscars than any other Disney animated film, you know? So I think it is really one of those things where I think the more attention gets put into we need to make this money, we need to make this money, and we need to like
Right.
get these accolades and stuff, I think that's where they get sidetracked. I really do. And I think this
Yeah.
was their big summer release and they wanted to get it out quick and they wanted to get it out as, you know, audience friendly as possible, which is also hard because it literally ties to two series and then a third film. I think that in and of itself was always going to be a tough hurdle already. And I think
Yeah.
they just prioritized the wrong things. And I think I agree with you. Like the designers are great, it's just they're not given the satisfaction in the I don't know if it's the editors themselves or the way the studio is having them
Mhm.
edited or whatever or rendered. I also think
Yeah.
it's time. I really think they're just rushing these things out because it's clear that when they're filming them, they're great, but then when they
Yeah.
come into theaters, they're not. And I think and I'm not even talking like story because story is whatever. It's more so like the visuals and the way it looks cheap. I'm looking at a movie I watched this week, which is the worst thing I watched this week, which is Argyle, which is very much
Mm.
it just very much felt like they had a lot of good ideas, but they didn't take the
Mm.
time to refine them and submit a second, third, fourth draft. They saw the first draft, they said this is fun enough. If we cast big stars, it won't matter, and they rushed it out.
Mm.
Some of the visual effects look crappy. It's way too full.
Mm.
There's 7 or 8 twists, and I think that's the thing is like I think they just want to get stuff out as soon as possible, especially with the strike. They're like, we need something. And I think what they've learned and what they've actually talked about recently, Bob Iger, who took back Disney this past year, um,
Mhm.
he made a lot of big announcements. First of all, Moana the series is now being turned into a film called Moana 2, which is coming out this year in November. And then he
Mm.
also announced that Marvel they are going to slow it down. They're saying we're not going to just put out so much a year. We're going to take our time, focus on the things that are actually making us money, the characters that are actually making us money, which is also important because if Shang-Chi and the Eternals aren't making you money, as sad as it is, maybe we have to focus on Spider-Man and Captain America until then, type thing.
Mm.
Or try with these new properties, kind of like Black Panther was, and then if that sticks, keep making those rather than experimenting too much because then you're losing so much money, you're spreading yourself way too thin. So I think that's kind of the
Mhm.
thing is they need to not worry about getting it in theaters because the thing is, look at Avatar. It took 2009 to 2023 or 22. That's how many years? 13 years. It took 13 years to get the sequel, but the sequel made so much money that it didn't matter that so if they had rushed to get it out in 2016 or whatever
Mm.
and it was a crappy
Yeah.
product, who's to say? But because they took their time and waited 13 years to release it, James Cameron waited 13 years because he didn't have the cameras to film underwater the way he wanted to, so he had to invent the cameras. That's what you should be doing. If
Mm.
you can't get the best possible product out there, delay it a year. And then when it comes out a year later and it's that much better, then it'll make the impact. If you take the time to make these things great, they will be great. But if you rush it out, anything that was great won't be when you try to rush the product. And I think that's what it is. I think it's a
Yeah.
rush schedule. I think they really need to just take their time. And the strike and the pandemic, you would think allowed them that time, but it didn't because they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, pandemic, we can just make so much more of this." But that kind of led them into a trap because they still weren't able to work a ton because it was a pandemic, and they still gave themselves like 20 projects to work on rather than okay, if we spend the pandemic only working on Eternals, imagine what would have happened then, you know? But instead, they worked on six,
Right.
seven, 8 projects at once, and it just didn't. We liked some of those movies and shows, but it didn't all feel like the peak when, like, remind you, like, we got Black Panther, Infinity War, and Endgame in the span of a year and a half. Like, it's possible if you give the time to make
Yeah.
really good stuff back to back to back. But one good film in a blue moon is not what any company should be going for as a standard. So, sorry for my rant, but that's what I think it is. I think it's the Lion King
No,
thing. I
I
think
asked.
they need to let the B team just roll and say, you know what, take your time on this. If it takes you 3 years, we'll release it in 3 years. That's what they should be doing with
Yeah.
Fantastic Four. Take the time, make it great. I'm glad they're not rushing to tell us who the Fantastic Four is. We only know Pedro Pascal, and that's fine. So I'm excited to hopefully see a
Yeah.
change, but we'll see.
And I also will, note I'm just realizing now as we're talking about it that Kevin Feige wasn't even like interviewed at all. Like he didn't talk about he didn't have any part of the Assemble episode, and I'm struggling to remember if he was a part of any of the other ones. Like I can't imagine
Sure.
why he wouldn't be, but because I feel like he always takes part and like has something to say about the project in some way,
Hmm.
but he wasn't involved in the assembled episode for the
Yeah.
Marvels at all.
Yeah, and I
So
think
I
it's
wonder
but
if
yeah, and he was heavily involved in the editing process, that's the only thing, is, like,
yeah.
because like, Guardians of the Galaxy, he wasn't involved, but he wasn't involved the whole time because he
Mhm.
trusted the director to go for it. Here, it was like, "I'm gonna let you guys film it all, but then I'm gonna take it in my own hands afterwards," and that to me
Right.
is where I'm like, "Ugh," like, and I respect what he did, he made this the biggest franchise in the world. I mean, there's a reason we have a podcast for it, it's because it's huge, and there's a lot to talk about with it, but also
Yeah.
there's the downside of when you have one guy kinda controlling everything, things like this are bound to happen eventually. You know, you're going to eventually run out of steam. And I don't know if it was the pandemic. I don't know if it was releasing Endgame too early to where it was like that felt like such a good conclusion that some people just kind of jumped off the ship there. I
Yeah.
really don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Because like for me, Dill, I don't know if that means like I mean, hopefully in like my small amount of optimism that I have left after all these years, um, I don't know if that means I'm interpreting that as maybe he's taking a step away from like he's letting go a little bit of some of the reins so
Hmm.
that I also think that he's probably really scrambling right now because of the whole Jonathan Majors um
Yeah.
incident and everything. Like like they essentially Marvel has to like rebrand right now everything that they were doing because their entire next two phases depended on that character. So
Right.
they seriously have to go back to the literal drawing board. Like they have to bring out the blueprints again and
Hmm.
just start fresh. And so I
Hmm.
think that that's probably taking up a lot of his time and yeah, it's just
I mean,
yeah,
but
it's
think about. I mean, the opposite end of the coin. This is a totally different scenario. But think about Chadwick Boseman. They had Black Panther
mhm,
2 ready to shoot, and then that threw their plans off. But I think they pivoted in an okay direction. I think there's a way to
yeah,
pivot in an okay direction with Kang. Either you recast him, which seems like
yeah,
the obvious, or you know what you do? You recast him with like six different actors and have like six actors playing different variants of Kang. Like that would be
mhm,
interesting. Kind of like how we had two Lokis, Loki and Sylvie. Like I think it's possible the
mhm,
variants don't have to look alike. The problem is they did show that one shot in Ant-Man where they all are together and they all are Jonathan Majors, which is a tough thing.
right,
But I mean, Marvel is understand. I mean, the audience is understanding. We know, like, I think the audience would rather see a different actor as Kang than them try to force a storyline to where Kang is totally not even a thought because they
right,
understand that we're all on the same page about the Jonathan Major stuff. There's nobody in the Marvel fandom, at least as far as I know, and if you're listening and you are,
yeah,
be very concerned and just curious as to your thoughts on it. But I don't think anyone is like,
yeah,
but like they should still let Jonathan Majors do the role. Like I don't think anyone's saying that, and I think
yeah,
that's why
no.
this is an easy time to recast. It's not like Terrence Howard and Don Cheadle, where it just doesn't make much sense. Like there's a logical reason to do it, and fans will understand. I think.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like a few weeks ago when we were talking about this when the news first broke, I was definitely team just like recast him. But I don't know if they are thinking maybe that because of because of how that actor was fired, maybe they're thinking that the entire role is now tainted and that
Maybe.
they want to pivot to an entire different direction so that there's no lingering like feelings towards the rest of the, MCU as we know it because they worked with this
Yeah.
human being that ended up
Well,
being awful.
yeah. Well,
So,
that was also
I don't
my
know.
my news was just the idea that Bob Iger did say they're gonna kind of like take a step back and focus on the characters that are really working. Because right now
Yeah.
money is their biggest thing. They lost so much money last year between the Marvels, Indiana Jones. The only movie that profited and like made money back was Guardians. Little Mermaid lost money. Elemental lost money, but then made money on streaming. So Elemental and Guardians 3 are the only two successes for Disney last year. Wish
Yeah.
made shit numbers. Marvel's Indiana Jones, Haunted Mansion, they were all shit numbers. So I really
Yeah.
think they need to like focus on money, and the way to do that is do the Avatar approach. Take your time to make something really good. So when something is really good, people want to see it and pay money for it rather than taking a chance and making seven shitty things that people don't want to go to theaters for. Because what happens is a movie comes out like Haunted Mansion and people say it wasn't that good and then no one goes to see it. But if you had spent
Yeah.
4 or 5 years making Haunted Mansion and making it the best freaking kids horror movie next coming of Beetlejuice, then people want to see it. So
Right.
I don't know. It's very interesting time we're in. And I'm glad we have this like platform to talk about it because as Marvel fans, we're not just here to praise the art. People don't want
Mhm.
to hear that. They want to hear us be critical of it because we're fans. The fans are the ones who should be the most critical because we want it to be good. We want our stuff
Right.
we want to be able to like say that everything is the next Infinity War Endgame, but it's not gonna be. But it can also be the next Black Panther, where it's still this great little gem.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be this monumental, end all be all of cinema. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping we're in a upward trajectory now, but we'll see. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, only time will tell, certainly.
Yeah, it's an election
Um,
year, so it's not going to be a fun year regardless. But
oh god, let's not.
this year is just yeah. Woo. Anyway, that was kind of my news. My best thing I watched this week. I've been watching a lot of the short films for the Oscars, and I'm gonna do my
Yeah.
own video on it. But I just wanted to shout out a few that I really liked.
Yeah.
I would check out Pachyderm, which is kind of like an allegory for abuse and like sexual assault, but you don't see any of it.
Mm.
It's very much like used through metaphor and through this young girl's perspective. It's a beautiful film, but a haunting film. There's a film called 95 Senses, which is about this guy who's on like death row, kind of reliving all the mistakes of his childhood and his youth,
Mm.
but using each of the five senses as like something to hone in on, and like he kind of like lets each sense go as he approaches his final hour, and it's really really profound. And then another one I really
Wow.
liked was one of the documentary shorts called The Last Repair Shop, which is actually on Disney Plus right now. It's about
Oh, yeah.
this last shop in, I forget what city it is, the last like instrument repair shop, and it talks just about like love that these musicians have for these instruments and how important it is to have, you know repair shops and not let like certain artifacts and musical instruments go, and like don't throw them out. And it's just really fun to see as a musician. It was just really good messaging. But those are some of the shorts I watched this week that I really like. So I'm trying to get through every Oscar movie ever, so or every
Yeah.
this year, every nominee. So I'm watching all the
Yeah.
shorts, and the shorts are fun because it's like you don't really know much about them, and it's just kind of like they're nominated for a reason, so you watch them, and there's some
Mhm.
pleasant surprises. There's some awful ones. Don't watch The After was terrible, but yeah.
Okay. Noted.
Not that you were going.
Speaking of Disney Plus still, I also have other news because something is coming to Disney Plus on March 15th, and it is the Eras Tour.
It is. I was like, "What is coming?" I was like, "Yeah, okay." Imagine,
Yeah.
and I think that was part of the big announcement too. So Disney had their big press day, their investors meeting, where they announced Moana 2, and they announced they were going to hold back on Marvels a little bit. They said Thunderbolts is about to go into production, and they did
Mm.
announce the Eras Tour, which I think is huge. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
money they spent, but they're gonna make a lot back, because how many people who don't have Disney Plus accounts are gonna get Disney Plus accounts to watch the Eras Tour? Probably a shit ton, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited. Oh my god, I'm so excited because it's gonna be the full thing now, and we're gonna get extra surprise songs. We're both gonna be able to see our favorite songs. For me, Cardigan. For you, Wildest Dreams.
Yeah, yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very excited. Maybe we'll do. Uh, I'm trying to think of things to pad the 24-hour time for the subathon. Maybe we do an Eras Tour watch during the subathon. I don't know. The only thing is
That
we
would
can't
be a
play the
nice
music, so it's just
three
gonna
and
be
a
us
half
like
hours
reacting to
killed.
it. Yeah, 3.5 hours. Jesus Christ. Oh, the neighbors are on the trampoline. Hey kids. No, I'm not used to recording in the studio. Okay. Let's actually talk about Echo with
Yeah,
30
let's talk
minutes.
about the episode.
Honestly, this is easy because there's really only like 4 or 5 scenes in this episode. Like a lot of the scenes are
Yeah.
very long scenes, and it's kind of all centered around
Yeah.
one central dynamic. But I will say this was maybe, I don't want to say my favorite yet, just because I want to see how the series wraps up. But I like this episode a lot. I think this was
Yeah.
kind of like a really good character building episode for not just Fisk and Maya, but
Yeah.
Maya's grandmother especially. So
Yeah.
I thought this was kind of the episode I've been like that's kind of tying things together in a nice way. Though I do have criticisms as always. So
Right. You know, Dill, for me, a lot of good things happened in this episodes. I really loved like the tension in a lot of these scenes that we got in this episode. But for me, it's like this. It's been the classic like what is the saying? Penultimate, like the
mhm.
penultimate like
Yeah,
episode
it's
to
very
the
setup.
grand finale
It's a
where yeah,
bridge.
it's literally it almost feels a little bit like a filler episode for me.
Hmm.
Like it's all the, it's very much like we're winding up, like the archer's pulling back and the big release is going to happen in the
Right.
next
But
episode.
but as Taylor Swift has showed us, maybe we'll never get that release if with the Archer. And that's my
Exactly.
big worry though, is that this finale, because the thing with
Mm,
these Marvel shows is they always spend the penultimate episode, like you said, building up to the finale, and it feels like all the character development is done in the penultimate episode to where the
mm,
last episode can just be action. But
yeah,
here I feel like I'm worried that like they did all the character building and the action, and the next episode is just not going to deliver, because for me the action has just been kind of okay. I haven't
yeah,
been blown away by the action, so I'm a little worried. I just don't know if this is like going to be the best. Like I'm worried that it's not going to deliver. And I'm a
yeah.
little worried. That's all.
Well, Dale, we did get some more gory stuff happening in this episode. We start this episode in a flashback to 2008. We see a
Yeah.
young Maya get out of school. She goes up to an ice cream stand. She wants some ice cream, but obviously she has a hard time communicating this to the man who's selling it. Fisk, who's picking her up from school, sees this interaction go down. And because she wasn't able to get her ice cream because the man had no patience to help this deaf child get some ice cream, that, pisses Fisk off as it
Yeah.
should. And he's like, give me 1 second. Uncle has something to do. He brutally attacks the man selling ice cream in an alleyway. We get some really good, we get the blood splattering on his white suit. He's,
I love
it's
how he
some,
wears white. It's just such like a
yeah,
good aesthetic choice. Yeah.
yeah.
I've
And
always
it's,
loved the Kingpin in terms of like his action and his stature. Like I
mhm,
think it's just a cool presence, because you don't see that a lot in the MCU. Usually everything that is hulking is a monster, but he's not. He's
right.
a real, I mean, he is a monster, but in a metaphorical sense. Like
No, no,
usually
no, I
they're
know what
they're
you mean.
big aliens or frost giants, but here he's just a guy.
Yes.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and he's a scary dude. I don't think I'd ever wanna be in an action sequence with Vincent D'Onofrio because I think I'd genuinely be scared for my life.
Hmm.
Um, but he's beating the shit out of this guy, there's no other way to say it, and so he gets on the phone, he says, "Hey, I need you to come bring me a new jacket. I don't want Maya to see me like this." And we come to find out, we cut to Maya, who is now standing there in the alleyway watching this scene unfold, and
Yeah.
instead of, being scared or acting in horror in any way,
she, she
she
joins right
starts
in.
she starts kicking the guy while he's down, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Huh." And that was just so, it was so, I viscerally reaction to this just because it's like you're seeing this, like, really young, seemingly harmless child,
Hmm.
like, partake in something so violent, um,
Yes,
that
but
it's
also it
you're
was a
just like,
great subversion of expectation. Like I was like,
yes,
wow, what it
100%.
because you think it's gonna be like that is why she's always kind of hated this guy, but no, it's
Right,
it's it's to show that she's very impressionable, which I think is very
exactly.
important to show her character guard. Yeah, I thought the sequence was great. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we jump forward to the year 2021, which, in my head makes me go, "Oh, so then Maya and Fisk didn't blip because
Mm.
they were
Okay, yeah,
alive
we,
in
we
the
got
year
to keep
2021."
tabs on everyone. Yeah, so they
Anyway,
didn't blip.
if
Yeah,
if you're
okay.
keeping track, if you've been with us since Endgame, they didn't blip. And so they're sitting down for one of their Sunday dinners. We come to learn they do this as a weekly thing, and Fisk is finally kind of passing the baton on to Maya officially and saying, like, it's now your time. You're going to be going on real missions for me. We're no longer living in like the theoretical. Like it's all you now. And so he dismisses the translator that's been working with him to translate for Maya, and they walk her down the hall to a like saran wrapped hallway, and they
For
execute
a
her.
serial killer. I had a question. Is this the
Yeah.
same translator we've seen this whole time? Or because I got the impression that every time he has someone translate for her
Oh,
because he doesn't want. Because the thing is, when you have a translator, you have another
yeah.
person that you're sharing your business with. And it's one of those things where
Yeah.
it's like, well, now she knows she has to get whacked. I took it as she's like, he does this every time he talks to her.
I mean, that's crazy. I love that choice.
But I
I'll
feel like
have to
she
go
would pick up
back.
on it, though. She would be like, where do these people keep going, Wilson?
Oh, you mean Maya would be like, "Why
Yeah.
do we have a new translator every time?" Yeah, probably. I was under the impression that it was the same woman throughout, but I'll definitely go back and see if it's someone new every time
Because
because
that
that
makes
would
him even
be
worse. Yeah.
horrifying,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
if
I
he
think
was
this
just
is also
offing these people.
and this is something that we'll talk about a little later when she kind of confronts him about it. But we've been talking about
Mhm.
how, and you thought this was an actor choice, but how he like obviously doesn't, communicate
Yes.
with her, and
Yes.
that shows his negligence or whatever. And my mom hasn't watched the series, but I was home. I finally moved back home for a few months, and I was sitting with her watching it, and she was like, "Oh, he's like not even bothering to learn sign language for her. He's not a good uncle." And I'm like, "You picked up on that really quick." She's just smart. But I was like, "Yeah, you're right,"
Becky's a
because
smart woman.
it took us talking about it for me to realize that. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think it's interesting, but the problem is they go as far as to like have Maya say that. She's like, "You didn't even bother learning sign language for me." I'm like, "Don't say it. Like, we know it as an audience." That's
Yeah.
one of those moments where I'm like, it would have been better if you just left it unsaid because I don't know.
Right.
I get it, but it's also like it almost felt like the audience had to be like fed. Like the creators was like, "Oh, just in case you didn't pick up on it, he wasn't learning
Right.
sign language because he doesn't care about her." Like that kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
But
Right.
anyway, that
Yeah.
was
It
one of
was
the things. But I like the interpreter thing. I think it made him a lot more menacing for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely got like it was just like definitely this episode was just so much darker than the other um 4 right off or 3 rather right off the bat. Which I thought I was like, "Oh, Dill's definitely going to appreciate this. Like this is the gore he's been waiting for."
Mhm.
Um so then we get our intro and we're back to the present where Fisk and Maya are, encountering each other for the first time since Maya thought that she killed him back in New York City. Um, and basically he has a few men hold her down and we see that he's trying to put what looks like a contact in her eye. And we soon realize that this is a device that allows her to look at people, and even if they're not signing to her, it will put the signing in for her vision to see so that she can understand pretty much everyone that she interacts with, regardless of whether or not they're signing.
Mhm.
And so now he has a device in his ear that when she signs, it translates for him, and then he hears what the sign
Which
language says.
is a brilliant invention, but also the more
Right.
you think about it, the more you find all the loopholes to realize it's totally impossible.
Right, because every other person now that she interacts with will have to have the earpiece if they don't know sign language.
And not even mechanically, but, like, just the idea that, like, you have this contact lens, right
Yeah,
here, like, what is it projecting? Like, how do you see it? It's, like, right on your eye, like, how
right.
are you seeing these clear images? I don't know, and it also
Well,
just looks silly as hell,
magical realism.
but my mom and I both were like, "That's kinda cool."
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
was really cool. Um,
At least he's
and
giving the bare minimum effort, like, at
yeah,
least he's going above and beyond to, like, at least try to communicate with her. But is it
yeah.
the question is it because he wants to communicate with her, like, and actually see her on her level, or is it because he doesn't wanna keep offing these interpreters and he wants to be able to talk to her without anyone else hearing their discussion?
Well, he did say he was like, "I thought it'd be best if we started communicating without, like, an in between, like a go between,"
Right.
is what he said. So I
And it's
think
not
it's
because of
because
personal
he
growth. Yeah, it's because of the
no,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
just because this is easier than, I guess, killing a bunch of people for him. Um And so she's like, "What do you want? What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I thought we'd have dinner together." And he brings a little picnic basket and a bottle of wine, and they go to Maya's house together. And um, they kind of have this conversation. And he's like, "Listen, I understand why you did what you did, but I'm willing to bet that you didn't actually want me dead. I think you were relieved to find out that I was alive." And she has this great line where she just goes, "No, I assure you, I wanted you dead." And I'm like, Maya
Maya's a
doesn't give a
badass.
fuck.
I fucking love
And that's
Maya.
what I love about her.
Mhm.
And so they're sitting down to share this meal, and she's kind of in this position where she knows she kind of just has to like stroke his ego a little bit and like appease him on the off chance he like fucking goes berserk and kills her or something crazy. So she's, appeasing him and amusing him just to be like, yeah, fine, we can sit down and like share this meal together. But it's just
Uh-huh.
got this really menacing tone behind it. Like he
Mhm.
goes to close the blinds and she's like, "Yeah, I'll open the bottle of wine." And then she opens the wine. We see her pour it down the drain. And at first I was like, "Oh, she's gonna put like Drano or something in this wine glass and like give it to him or something." No, she ended up just like pouring it out because I guess maybe she was afraid that it was already contaminated with, and she was like, "I'm not drinking anything that you
Mhm.
give me."
Yeah.
Um, and then he's passing out, like, silverware. They have this great moment where, like, a steak knife drops, and they both, like, go for it, but he's like, "No, I'll get it." And he hands it to her, and it's just, like, this very delicious, like, tension, like, back and forth. Like, this is kind of, like, what I've been missing from this show is, like, these just moments of, like, real built up. tension.
Yeah, it's the Michael Keaton in the car at prom with Tom Holland scene. It's that type of drama where it's like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
there's no costumes. It's just two people who very clearly want to say something but can't, and there's lingering tension, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's awesome. I love the scene. Yeah.
And so basically he tells her like, "I know what you want. You want an empire. You can have it. It's yours. The only thing you have to do is you have to come back with me to New York." And she's like, "Okay, well, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if I can trust this guy. Like it just
Right.
seems all too good to be true." So she ends up turning to Henry um and saying, telling him everything that went down and he's like, "Listen, like you can't trust this guy. Like I'm the reason why I'm 45 and alone is because he's taken away everyone I've ever cared about, and I tried so hard to get out from under his thumb, but it's just impossible. Like once you
Mhm.
work for him, he owns you. So I really don't want that life for you. So please don't go to New York City." And while they're having this conversation, we do cut to her grandma who's setting up at the festival they're going to have. And they're both kind of having this moment where they're having these flashes back to their ancestors.
Mhm.
And Henry's like, "Okay, you need to talk to your grandma about this. Like, you both just need to come to terms with the fact that you're both here and you need to have a conversation because this is just going to keep happening." So he drives her to grandma's house. They sit down and Maya opens up about everything she's been experiencing. She's like, "I'm seeing images of like this cave collapsing and these trees surrounding me and I don't understand what's happening." And so her grandmother explains to her that like the ancestors have been visiting her because we've been seeing flashes recently because we saw the cave woman, we saw the woman who is playing the the sports game in
Mhm.
the other episode. We had the black and white episode of the woman who is really good at shooting things. There's no other way to word that. I didn't know how to put that. Um, Good for her. And so we've been seeing recently flashes of a woman giving birth in a forest. And so we learn through grandma's story that this actually is her grandma giving birth to Maya's mother. And
Mhm.
the name of our episode, Taloa, was Maya's mother. And
Yeah.
so
I
she was
was
having
wondering at the
complex
beginning, I
yeah.
was like, "Why aren't we getting an inciting" like, the whole framing device
Mm.
I loved, and then they threw it out the window, but I get how it's like, this is no longer an ancestor type like, this is her mother now, it's like her story.
Yeah,
I get
like
I like that, yeah.
we've worked our way down the ancestral line and now we're like at the intermediate family kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I
So I
kind of liked
assume next one
how
will be her, like, herself, right? Maya herself.
well, so yeah, when this episode ended and it was like play episode 5, the title of the episode was Maya. So I was like,
Oh, is it
"Huh."
really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it
Whoops,
is.
I didn't see that.
Not to, like,
Okay.
spoil that for you, Dill, but anyway, I thought that from the beginning. I was like, "Oh, I wonder if, like, episode 5 is gonna be called Maya because it's all, like, leading up to her." And so,
So
lo and
grandma
behold,
just
it
didn't
is.
get one? That sucks.
Yeah, I guess that it skips a generation, I don't know.
Hmm, okay. No,
Anyway,
but wait, okay, yeah.
so grandma was that well, she kinda did because she was the woman in the story giving birth. So, like, she had to deal
Mhm,
she had a role in this. And so she's having complications with this pregnancy. She ends up giving birth in the forest with a midwife, and she explains that when her daughter was born, Taloa, she had this gift of healing. So once she was born, like, the mother healed, the baby healed, like, everyone was fine. Um, and so once they get caught up with all of this, she thinks that grandma's theory is that these ancestors are visiting them because they've been like torn apart and like the ancestors want them to rekindle their relationship and
right.
make amends and come back together. But grandma says like I just couldn't bear being around you because you reminded me too much of my daughter who was dead, and it
Mhm,
was because of your father's fault. So I didn't mean to like drive this wedge in between our relationship. I was just too hurt by the fact that she was gone. And Maya was like, "Well, I was a child, so you took it out on me and you really shouldn't have." And so she kind of storms out of grandma's house and is like, I, I have she feels that she has no responsibility in this situation because she was a
right.
child, which is
Mhm.
fair,
Yeah.
Grandma should have been there for her granddaughter.
Yeah.
And so we get this montage, we get a needle drop. Um, it's a song called "Down to the River to Pray" by Alison Krauss, and we kinda get this montage of Maya really, sitting with her thoughts and thinking about everything, probably debating whether or not she wants to go back to New York City, what she can do to, save her family. We see grandma is kind of, almost making, a dress or some sort of, maybe suit of some kind for Maya, that's my prediction. She's maybe taking one of her mother's old clothes and turning it into something that Maya can wear.
Hmm.
Um, and then we get, biscuits. In case you were worried about the truck he destroyed, he's
So random.
going to a junkyard to look for parts for it. Um, and so we cut to the hotel that Fisk is staying at and their gun drawn. Um, And he's like, "Oh, great. You're probably here to kill me, right? Well, that's just perfect because I'm prepared for this moment." And he opens up about how he killed his father to break free from him and that if Maya wants to do the same thing, he's basically going to let her do it. Whether or not he was actually going to let her do it, who's to say, but
Yeah.
I think we both the audience knew going into the scene that she wasn't just going to start pounding on him with this
No,
hammer
it would make
because,
no sense because
she
also
she
we
tried
know
once
Daredevil's
and
coming
it
out
didn't
too.
work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's gonna be a
So,
Daredevil, so like we know, yeah, he has to survive this series.
she does have this she does, you know, he's like, I was there for you. I gave you everything. You're the reason you are because of me." And she's like, "All of my memories are a lie because you never truly cared about me." And this is when she expresses, "You never even cared to learn sign. So you've obviously never even truly cared about me. You isolated me. You told me that I was the only person that you were the only person that I could trust." And it's just sounding so manipulative and he almost sounds like a cult leader, like how they strip
Hmm.
you of your identity and your sense of the world so that you
Yeah.
only rely on them. And
Hmm.
um and he's like, "Oh, I gave you everything. I protected you," like whatever he says. And so he's like, "Listen, this is gonna here's a hammer I used to kill my father. And if you want, you can kill me with it too right now. And you can free yourself and you can free me." And, Maya doesn't. She throws down the hammer and he basically has a moment where he's like, "Maya, you and I, we're not so different." That's my best
That's a
Kingpin.
good one.
And the episode ends with, Fisk getting on his private jet back to New York City and someone informing him that they're like, "Listen, we tracked her down for as long as we could, but we lost her, and I don't think she's coming." So
Yeah.
Maya has seemingly disappeared. Where she's gone and
Yeah.
who she's turning to, maybe, we don't know, but we
Where
know that she's not turning to Kingpin.
I was gonna say, yeah, where's this series going now? Like, what is this last episode gonna be? That's what I want to know.
I mean,
Because I feel like a
that's a
lot
great
of the character
question.
that was my whole worry is I feel like all the character development is like kind of resulted here. Like she and her grandmother have kind of made up, sort of, not really made up, but like they've had that important conversation finally. Her and Fisk had that closure. Like I don't know where else this goes, but I'm curious. I'm excited regardless. I think this was probably the
Yeah.
strongest episode now talking about it. I just think the scene work was really solid, but
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you asked that, deal, because in my head, I'm asking the same thing because you think that you know, it's all gonna come to head where she has to, fight Kingpin again, but this show started with her trying to kill him and failing. So it's like, what are you supposed to do after you literally shoot someone point blank in the face and it still doesn't kill them? So it's where do you go from there? So I guess what I'm assuming the rest of the show is gonna be is her trying to rekindle her life in Tama Tamaha,
mhm.
Oklahoma, and, rekindling her relationship with Bonnie and, possibly helping Biscuits with his truck because that's been a major B plot.
Bonnie, who I keep forgetting is a person, and I think she got
Yeah,
one shot in this thing where like literally it's shot to her standing above a sink.
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like they really did her dirty, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe she's just not that important.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was Echo episode 4. I thought it was good, solid. I think the acting was great. I still love
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio, and I know Kelsey's a little lukewarm on him, but yeah, I think he did a great job in this. And I don't like how they kept his eye kind of intact though. I really wanted him to just rip
Mm.
off that band-aid and it'd be a big gaping hole. Or like
Sure. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fucked up that it's like this
Well,
is very Nick Fury where I'm like, all right, well, okay, you don't need to wear the eye patch.
right. It's like when Thor had an eye patch at the end of Ragnarok, and then like 20 minutes into Avengers Infinity War, he just gets a new eye. And it's like,
Right, but
oh,
at least
okay,
that
well,
is like, oh, open socket. Here it was just like it was like, yeah, no, it's just a little scratched. You know?
I thought that he was saying that he had gotten like a new eye, basically, like how
Oh, maybe.
Thor got. And he was like,
Maybe.
"Oh, well, you left me this like souvenir or something," or whatever he said when he peeled off the patch. Like I thought that he was like, it can't be the original eye. That eye's got to be destroyed, right?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. He just ripped off that
Right.
band-aid and it looked like a cat scratch at most. I was like, this is not bad. You didn't get shot in the face. Come on.
Right, right.
I don't know. But that's also I
Well,
watched all of Walking Dead and Carl famously gets shot in the eye through the eye and has a big
ugh.
gaping hole. But
Well,
survives.
that's my other complaint about Kingpin is that he's supposed to be just a dude, but he's not because he can get shot in the face and be
Well,
fine.
that's the thing is he's just a dude, but he's got some sort of superhuman. But I don't know. I'm not a comic lore person, so I don't know if this is true or
Mm,
not. But like, I wonder if there is some sort of like serum or something he took or something. I don't know.
mm.
Or if he's just a big hulking guy. I don't know. Because in like the Spider-Verse movie, he's like huge, and like he like
Right.
like it's almost exaggerated. So I think that's just
Yeah.
how it is in the comics. So they're like, we want you to kind of suspend belief and just imagine he's just got super strength, almost like Mr. Incredible. um yeah, all right, that's it. Anything else on Echo 4? It seems like we're
Um,
farther into a series than just a fourth episode, but it's only the fourth episode.
when do you wanna see Madam Web?
Yeah, we got to figure that out.
It comes out
um
on Valentine's Day. It's coming
yes,
out
I
on
can't.
Wednesday?
Yeah, I can't go then just because I have rehearsals and stuff. Well, we'll touch base about it though, because spoiler alert, I start rehearsals for a new show this week, so that's exciting. That's why I'm living
Oh,
in
that's
Jersey for the next
great.
few months. So yeah, Sunday rehearsals start. It's funny to say Sunday rehearsals because the show is called Sunday, but it's not. Like the day isn't Sunday. I'm like starting Sunday rehearsals on Tuesday. Rehearsals start Tuesday,
Yeah.
so I got to figure out exactly what my schedule is. I also have to figure out with Chad and Dan for Picture This recording too, just because that's 10 movies and that's hard as well to coordinate. Because Mondays are my only day off, but I'll have time to figure it out. But we'll figure out Madam Web, even if we don't see it together. I really don't want to see it at all, but we got to make
You
it
don't wanna
happen.
see it with me, do?
No, I do, but I it's like one of those things where it's not. It doesn't feel like an event for me. It feels like a work.
Mm, a
It feels
chore.
like work. Yeah, not even a chore, but like it feels like
This is
work
my job.
the same way Morbius was. But Morbius, I was also excited because it could have been something kind of crazier. I don't know. I'm hoping it's better than Morbius, but we'll see. My girl Sydney's in it, so we'll see how it is. Any other thoughts, Kels?
Um, no, I've been really enjoying Echo despite, the typical Marvel TV show downfalls that we've seen in all of the shows across the
Yeah,
board, but I've really been enjoying this, like, through line of, all these powerful women she's connected to and how the series is gonna end with an episode
yeah.
titled after her, so I'm excited.
Cool. You can find me here at Dylan, Dill Pickle Movie Network on YouTube, or if you're listening to podcasts, head over to the YouTube feed. Dylan_Randazzo on X or Twitter. Ugh, I can't believe I said X first. Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok. We also have the Dill Pickle Movie Network TikTok, which I'm gonna hopefully get more active with now that I'm like home and not, working my restaurant job for the next few weeks. Kelsey, where can
Wow.
they find you?
You can find me at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick on Instagram. You can follow my TikTok at Kelsey A. Kilp, and my letterbox is the exact same thing at Kelsey A. Kilp.
Woo! Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next week for our review of Madam Web. Stay tuned. It'll be a doozy.